Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in and welcome to our latest live session. This is the second that we are doing in collaboration with our friends at the ICTA. And with the involvement of the ICTA, obviously, we are here today to give you information on various technological stuff that you can look into to help your theaters as we're going back towards the process of reopening. Certainly these last couple of weeks have been busy ones in terms of news as we move towards a wider reopening across North America. So we're real excited here to get some insight from various members of the ICTA about the way to make that as smooth as it can possibly be. Starting off, before we throw this to them, the same housekeeping measures that we do every week here. We have the chat section. Hello to everyone saying hello in there. We always love to see you. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the panel, so please take to the questions tab to ask any questions you might have and to upvote questions that other people ask in order to move them up the queue if it's something that you're really interested in hearing the answer to. So from there, I will throw it over to Frank Tees of Moving Image Technologies and ICTA. Frank, thanks so much for joining us again.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Box Office for the opportunity to present the latest ICTA Technology Reboot Camp. Welcome to everybody worldwide, and thank you for joining us. My name is Frank Tees, Vice President of Technical Sales Support with Moving Image Technologies and Vice President of the ICTA. Today, we'll be discussing new technologies to help cinemas reopen. The International Cinema Technology Association, or ICTA, is a global network of professionals in the motion picture industry. Members of the ICTA are those professionals and companies that manufacture, service, create, sell, and use the equipment that goes into movie theaters. To learn more or to join the ICTA, go to ica-web.com. And a quick note to everyone in our family, all of the members of the ICTA consider you, all of our partners in cinema exhibition, content, service, manufacturing, innovation, and support, not only our friends, but part of our family. We're all here for you and each other during this intermission in our business and lives, and we eagerly hope to support you and to see you all as the curtain rises again in your theaters, at trade shows, and in person coming soon. The COVID-19 pandemic has transformed our day-to-day lives as we know them. All of us have been personally affected, and we are mindful that the weeks and months ahead will continue to present major challenges in the entire motion picture industry. We're now at the next juncture during this crisis when the theaters worldwide are beginning to open. There are lots of guidelines that need to be followed in each territory, and the norm will be very different than in the past, but together we will succeed together. Our great industry will come out of this stronger and more successful than ever before. Our previous Reboot Camp webinar focused on restoring your cinema technology to service, concerns to look for, troubleshooting of simple items, when to ask for help, and where to find it. You can find this webinar on our website at icta-web.com. Today, it's our intent to talk about new products and technologies, or technologies that are new to us, that have manifested themselves during this crisis. We will see some of the products that members of the ICTA have developed to address sanitation, thermal measurement, barriers and guards, and PPE, or personal protective equipment. We'll also discuss seating occupancy technologies and software that's available to help you in the operation of your theater and to meet the criteria for opening and remaining safe for your patrons. Additionally, with us is a member of the National Association of Concessionaires to discuss current practical measures being taken in theater concession stands as theaters begin to reopen. The National Association of Theater Owners is taking steps to assure state and local governments that there are serious efforts being taken to assure public safety. Before we begin, we have a video that was created for NATO of New York State, along with their lobbyists, to inform the state of New York on how theaters are being prepped to open safely.
Give us a second here as we just queue up the media.
It's in there somewhere.
It's in here somewhere. There we go. And without further ado, here is the video from our partners at NATO.
You've decided you want to go to the movies. From the beginning, we will work to keep patrons safe and require physical distancing. Here's what you need to know before you go. First, patrons and employees will not be able to come to our venue if they feel sick or have any of the symptoms related to COVID-19, and may be asked to leave if they don't comply. Patrons will be encouraged to purchase their tickets online through the reserved seating ticket option. If you need to buy your ticket at the theater, designated lines will be marked for credit and cash purchases. Employees will be separated from patrons by a plexiglass window. For most patrons, tickets are displayed on their mobile phone and can be scanned from a distance. For others, tickets can simply be printed from home, then hole-punched or marked with a pen, rather than torn, for a touchless solution. Seating will be assigned to create a 6-foot radius distance between patrons. When you arrive at the theater, you will notice immediately that our staff are wearing the required PPE and signage that informs everyone of the new physical distancing, that you need to be wearing a mask, and to wash your hands. Now, let's get some popcorn and a beverage to go with your ticket. Most movie theaters will offer online concession purchases. When a patron arrives, they will be directed to a designated spot to pick up their refreshments before heading into the theater itself. If you did not pre-order, you will enter the concession line and maintain physical distancing standards. All of our employees will be wearing gloves and masks, and you will pick up your order at a designated spot. Now it's time to go to your seat. If you purchased your ticket online, an usher will simply scan your phone from a distance. For theaters with traditional seating, families of the same household can be seated together. There will be the appropriate number of empty seats on either side to maintain a 6-foot radius. Notice that only 50% of the theater's capacity will be available. If a theater does not have a reserved seating policy, an usher or theater manager will enforce this policy in the auditorium and monitor during the show at routine intervals. Also, for theaters without stadium or recliner seating, rows can be alternated from showtime to showtime, allowing for further sanitization time for seating. This is similar to what restaurants will be doing and will maintain physical distancing guidelines. Now you can safely enjoy the movie. Please do not move your seat without permission from a manager, and remember to keep your mask on except when eating or drinking. When the movie is over, you will exit the row in one direction and maintain physical distancing upon exiting. You will not be crossing paths with other movie patrons entering the theater for the next show because we have staggered the show times. This also allows us time to clean the seats in the theater you were just in. Theaters and patrons will be required to follow the Centers for Disease Control Coronavirus Prevention Guidelines, New York State DOH requirements, and all social distancing requirements established by the governor. Formal procedures will be in place, including physical distancing guidelines for restrooms, including cleaning before and after each show, signage posted to indicate that guidelines must be maintained, extra hand sanitizer stations located throughout the theaters. Independent and historic theaters with smaller lobby areas and limited technology adhere to these guidelines. The movie theater industry, like the restaurant industry, knows it needs patrons to feel safe with safeguards in place to address the new normal. We believe we can reopen and deliver movie theater entertainment better than before and safely by limiting capacity, adding new procedures and equipment to ensure the safety of our employees and patrons. Enjoy the show.
That was a great and informative video. Thanks for introducing that, Frank. Before we move forward, I'm going to put a couple of our colleagues off stage here. They'll still be joining us, but just here in the background. We'll be leaving Frank here to introduce the coming videos. So Alan and Shelley, we'll see you guys shortly. And to my colleague Rebecca as well, who will be returning with us for the Q&A session. All right, Frank, take it away. What do we have coming up next?
So, of course, that video was for the state of New York. The various territories, states, and countries will have suggested remedies for the situation. So now we'll be discussing a variety of products that are available in the marketplace that can help you meet some of the guidelines that have been mandated by your state, territory, and country to keep your theaters operating safely. At the conclusion of this webinar, we'll list the names of the companies that we have that have presented and the products and how to reach them. Quick note before we start, please research the products before you purchase to ensure they will adequately and effectively serve your needs and meet your local requirements for reopening. The manufacturers are available to answer all of your questions, and contact information will be provided at the end of the webinar. First to present is Alan Rowe, CEO of Jack Rowe and President of the ICTA.
Thank you very much, Frank. So we're going to be covering, of course, new technologies, new products that have come out of the cinema industry that are available from your existing cinema manufacturer supply chains. Now, the overriding theme is check to see what your vendors might have that they didn't previously have. It doesn't matter how well you know that vendor. You may have known them for decades. The products that they have now may be different or supplement what they've always had. And so please check with them. They may well surprise you with what they have. We have a few examples in here of companies that you wouldn't necessarily think to check for specific products who have them. Now, there are some great advantages to going to your existing cinema manufacturers. First of all, it's a supply chain you can trust. You know, if you have that relationship and you know the product quality is there, then you know that you're going to have it in the new products. But also it's about supporting them, because you know you want them to be strong to help your business, and so if you're able to buy from them where you can, then of course there are advantages there too. So as I say, please consider buying from cinema industry manufacturers rather than necessarily jumping online and seeing what's out there. The cinema industry stuff may also be specific to the industry. It might have subtle differences, subtle changes that help to make it more suitable for the cinema environment too. So let's have a look and see what we have. So we're going to start off with PPE, something which unfortunately we've all had to become very familiar with over the last few months. So gloves and masks have become a sort of a mainstay, a sort of staple of many of our lives nowadays. Interestingly, Harkness screens have diversified into making face visors, barrier screens, and aprons. So, you know, a 90-year-old screen manufacturer getting into making PPE, not something necessarily that everyone would have thought of. So it highlights the importance of checking your vendor, find out what they've got, get that list of stuff, see how it might help you to reopen. Harkness have also put, it's possible to brand that face visor. So it could be, as I say, some advantages of that over what you might be able to find elsewhere. And then Standout Graphics have also done some shields between customers and employees. So check your existing vendors. This is all about trying to keep your employees safe, and as well as your customers. So next up, we have the customer-to-customer spacing. So this is keeping the customers away from each other. So first thing, top right, is again, Standout Graphics have produced these stickers, easily applied to the lobby, put them down hallways, and just help to remind customers you need to be socially distancing. It makes it clear what the policy is. Communication is critical. It's also a helpful visual reminder, because people have been in the cinema environment for some time. They get in it, they forget what's going on outside. You know, that's the beauty of cinema, right? This is a reminder when you're outside the auditorium, or in the aisles, keep apart from each other. So again, it's solution off the shelf. You can go and get it and put it on easily. Furco partition panels. So of course, your seating manufacturer, Furco have luxury seats, they have general admission seats, and they have partitions for both. So please check with your seating manufacturers, see what they have to keep that shield between people. It could be the increasingly important, or even a legal requirement in some, even all countries. Now, telescopic seating have also a generic partition panel. So if you find out that your seating manufacturer doesn't have them, or perhaps you have some seats where the seating manufacturer doesn't exist anymore, then you know you've got some options there. You could go to another seating vendor like Telescopic and say, hey, you know, this is what I got. What can you do? And again, I love the diversification, the creativity here. Critters, I think Critters invented the sort of modern popcorn machine. I may have got that right. Anyway, so very much associate them with popcorn machines, and you know, but fundamentally, you're talking about sheet metal bending. You're talking about glass and so on. So what have they got here? They've got a standing shield to help separate your customers. So this, for example, may go between customers at the POS, something like that, or queuing to go into an auditorium, just keeping them apart from each other. Now it's got wheels, so things are obviously fluid at the cinemas. People will open the cinemas and things may change over the first few days, first few weeks. So again, easily moved around and so on. So got some options there. POS, of course, close to my heart. Social distancing, we talked a fair bit about that in the last webinar. So not going to dwell on it, but just one thing to mention is the wheelchairs. So be conscious of people buying seats that might accidentally block out the wheelchair seats. You want to make sure that you meet, of course, disability requirements. If people happen to have bought seats that make your disability ones unavailable, then you may well no longer be compliant with disability laws. So you may want to block some off around there. The general settings in POS systems for this kind of thing are very similar. Blocking seats, straightforward. Set the number of seats that you want either side of people. Again, as far as I'm aware, all the POS systems are offering this. So speak to your POS vendor and find out how to do it in the system that you have. Curbside concessions, again, lots of the POS companies have got this. So speak to your POS company, find out how to achieve that. It's all slightly different in the different versions. There's one here, example on screen, but as I say, different ways of doing it. Contact tracing. This is something which not all the POS companies are doing because, of course, the government have their own contact tracing solutions coming out that may supersede them perhaps, but certainly in all the POS systems, you will have methods for looking at different customer groups. So you could use a CRM system to see who went to the cinema at perhaps certain times or certain performances and so on. Paperless ticketing, now of course not a new idea, but there have been a lot of enhancements to existing paperless ticketing. But mentioning here also consider stands for that device so that the employee doesn't need to hold it, because that potentially could be another few feet between the employee and the customer. If you can keep your employees safe, that's obviously critical. You know, they're relying on you for a safe work environment, but also if they get sick, they could get customers sick. You could also have an even worse problem with more people getting sick. So that stand could make all the difference to give them that extra couple of feet. The contactless pin pads, similar story. You've got that there in lots of cinemas already, but for those who don't, seeing more people putting those in, and you could again consider a stand because a lot of people will grab the pin pad and stick a card in. Great. Now the next customer who does that, we have an issue. Whereas if it's on a stand, then it's less likely they're going to grab that whole thing before they put their card into it or tap it on there. Party room booking, cinemas are seeing, I think, increased interest and in party room booking because of the number of events that have been cancelled. You know, birthdays could be Granny's 90th birthday, you know, like it's been cancelled, you need a space to put it in. Well, suddenly cinemas, because you have this big space, become, you know, quite attractive. Although obviously cinemas are facing a very hard time, at least they're not the smallest venues. They have space to keep people separated within the auditorium. That said, if it is a private rental, of course, it's still your responsibility as the cinema venue owner to make sure that people are socially distancing. But as I say, there's been an uptick in interest there. And to support that, the occupancy of auditoriums, of course, has gone significantly down from a maximum of 100% down to maybe 20, 30%. And as such, the total value of that auditorium on a normal show has gone down. And therefore, rentals are more affordable for people because you're not losing so much revenue or jeopardizing so much revenue by doing a private rental instead of a public film. So seeing some of that. So again, contact your POS company, find out what options are there. It might be that there's something in there already. It might be that there's some workarounds, but again, speak to your vendors, find out what they have. Seat sensors, QSC, the audio manufacturer, they also produce the QSYS system, for those of you not familiar with it, which helps to interconnect different technologies within environments like a cinema. And so they are looking to match up the seat sensors and the POS so that alerts and so on can be going off if people are sitting in the wrong seats. Because it's one thing, people are being assigned a seat that will keep them socially distanced. QSC are trying to help address the issue of policing the auditorium. So of course, if you can reduce staffing, but actually police it more accurately, then clearly there are huge advantages to that. Seat cleaning. So cleaning is something that Frank is going to talk a fair bit about, but just a little bit here. So seat cleaning, telescopic seating have come up with something called the Smart Clean Sweep that should be manufacturer agnostic. So it should work with really any reclining seat. It will automatically open up all of the seats that have been sold following a show, so you can easily get around them and clean them. On top of that, you can have a collar that shows whether or not they've been cleaned, which is useful for the cleaning crew to make sure that they've been cleaned. And also it's reassuring for customers because they can see, right, the seat's green, I know it's been cleaned. Also, there's an option for UVC disinfection underneath the seat. So you can have UV lights that come on and sort of clean the area underneath and around the seat, just to help prevent things from growing there. So finally, we have a little bit about safety communication. So getting the message out is clearly very important. It's communicating within your team and also communicating with customers. POS companies, time clock companies, are providing sort of questionnaires when someone clocks in. Are you feeling any of these symptoms? Have you been around anyone who has? Have you been in any public areas? Social distancing questions. So that's useful. But there's something which Cielo have created called Cielo QR, which is a cloud-based mobile app. Using this, you can create a checklist of different cleaning activities that need to be done, and you can associate a QR code with it. You can then put that QR code around the cinema, and it has a couple of interesting, useful features. One is the employees can scan it and they can then check off what they've done for central reporting, but then also for customers, they can scan it and they can see, for example, when an area was last cleaned, and they can also report if there's a potential issue or breach. So there's that communication piece, which is very important. So as I say, one of the most important themes here is to speak to existing vendors. There are products coming out potentially this week that weren't there last week or the week before. So find out, even if you know that manufacturer only makes a specific thing, just check with them, just check with everyone. What have you got? Because there's lots of companies out there who are designing things to help make cinemas open as successfully as possible. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Frank.
All right, we should be jumping right into the next video. And you'll see a familiar face. There we go.
Frank Tees with MIT and ICTA here to discuss some additional supportive products for opening your theaters. Some of our ICTA member manufacturers are stepping up to the battle against COVID-19 directly by providing cleaning supplies and supportive items for theater public areas. Hand sanitizing stations are very popular, so people can sanitize between the many touch points in a theater. Putting these stations near the front door, concession, and in the theater hallway offer the best visibility. Mag Cinemas offers different models for the floor, countertop, or walls. Disinfectant stands, including those with an automatic dispenser, are also available. Partner Tech includes a hand sanitizer station in their point-of-sale kiosk. Standout Graphics makes the sanitizer part of their temperature check kiosk. Cleaning chemicals. For chemicals and their information, contact the EPA.org or your janitorial supplier to check for safe disinfectants for use in public spaces, and always have and read the material safety data sheet. Cleaners should also be researched for use with surfaces in your building. For instance, contact your seating manufacturer to determine what will be an adequate solution for wiping down your seats. Then, consider providing wipes to your customers with approved chemicals for the wipe down. The downside of not providing this is someone might take a harsh chemical or bleach wipe that they've brought with them to your chair and ruin the material. Along with hand sanitizer stations, Creeders has sanitizing wipe dispensers for the entrance to your theater. Wrong button. There are some more advanced products for sanitizing your theaters. Automatic foggers can be used to apply sanitizing solutions for smaller size rooms. A small wheeled unit can be wheeled into a room and set to fill the room with a chemical fog and notify you when the process is complete. Check for compatibility with your wall treatments, seats, screens, and finishes. Electrostatic spraying is a manual but highly portable technology. It applies the cleaning solution to surfaces using a static sprayer, and the applied solution wraps around the surface you are treating. The solution is electrically charged to help fill gaps and prevent shattering. There are many types of foggers and electrostatic equipment, so please do your homework on the different products. This technology can be used with several different chemicals. Standout graphics can help with understanding which application technology is right for you. UVC technology uses ultraviolet light in the C spectrum to kill germs, bacteria, and organisms, including viruses, by breaking down the DNA and RNA. The C spectrum of ultraviolet light is present in sunlight and is a component that is dangerous to humans, but if properly used, can sanitize surfaces and the air we breathe. XD6 has introduced the Elavo system to sanitize 3D glasses quickly between uses using UVC technology. They can be contacted for more information. UVC can also be used in special baffled fixtures mounted to the walls and in ceiling to kill germs in the air. Digital Light Sources is distributing this technology, as well as a UVC wand that can sanitize intricate surfaces without touching or chemicals. There are mobile UVC units that are used in hospitals to sanitize entire treatment rooms. On a larger scale, DLS also has UVC technology that can be installed in HVAC systems to treat the air as it's recirculated. It prevents bacteria growth and is effective against the SARS-CoV-2 virus, according to the IES. Contact Digital Light Sources for more information. A quick note on heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Filters can be improved to clean the air more efficiently. However, selecting an incorrect filter for your HVAC system can seriously damage the unit, requiring thousands of dollars in repair. Just because a filter fits doesn't mean it's appropriate for your HVAC system. Always contact an HVAC professional before making modifications to HVAC systems or attempting to use higher efficiency filtration. HVAC professionals can suggest what filter is right for your system. Non-contact temperature measurement technology is a very mature technology and has many forms. Thermal technologies can be appropriate for different areas of your theater and can be effective for checking feverish patrons and employees. Handheld IR scanners, or point and shoot, provide a quick scan with numerical temperature readout. These units require longer scan for an average measurement, but are compact and inexpensive. There are medical and non-medical grade units, and they shouldn't be interchanged. Handheld IR cameras are also point and shoot, provide a quick full scan with a numerical and video readout. These units have photo and data interface, but may require custom software for your cinema use. Some of these thermal cameras can scan multiple people or even groups at once, and subsequently have the highest precision and cost. Handheld IR infrared tablets and cameras are point and shoot, provide a large display, a quick full scan in about 1 second. Visible feedback for either user or scanned individual is available, and photo and data output is available if needed. Some may use a reference heat source for more accurate use in variable ambient conditions, and those are provided if needed. The displays are available in many sizes and can mount to a pedestal, wall, or countertop. They can interface with time clock systems and digital signage to provide a report card of the on-duty staff. This might be a good customer-facing metric and a good place to show your policy. Moving image technologies can help you select the right thermal measurement technology for how you operate your theater in a post-outbreak world.
Great. Thanks so much, Frank. So just to go back to the original concept in terms of the most important thing being, please check with your vendors, find out what they have. And also something that Shelley, in fact, mentioned earlier this morning was to find out what they could have as well. Fundamentally, lots of manufacturers with lots of different capabilities. If you need something, contact your manufacturers and find out. It might be that they don't have it, but that they could make it. So next today, we have an interview with Shelley Olson, the VP of Development with Creators & Company, where she's been for 30 years. She's going to be discussing more on the sort of concession side, based on her experience with both with Creators & Co. and also with the National Association of Concessionaires. what they found out in terms of helping cinemas reopen their doors so far and preparing for those who are about to.
All right, thanks, Alan. Frank T's here with Shelley Olson, VP of Sales and Marketing with Seacreators and Company, an accredited concession supplier with the National Association of Concessionaires. We will be discussing current practical efforts from exhibitors to open their concession stands.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Box Office Magazine, as well as ICTA, for giving me the opportunity to address some of the, or share some of the conversations I've had throughout this terribly tough time. We've had a lot of conference calls, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for being with us. What's the number one goal come time to reopen?
I think the number one goal is to get people in the door and to get people back with business as usual, as it's, or business as it's intended to be. No one wants to feel like they're walking into a hazmat area. So I think it starts with training the staff, from what I'm getting from the conversations we're having and having the staff have full buy-in of the extra steps that the theaters are taking for sanitation. Actually, many theaters have a specified sanitation staff, and they want to make it really noticeable and clear that extra steps are being made. Actually, one of the theaters celebrates cleaning every 45 minutes, and they make it really fun. And they make it obvious, and the customers have actually started getting into it. So I think that's pretty cool. Signage, super important. You have to have it clear and everywhere. You know, in the theaters, there's tons of marketing materials everywhere. So it gets pretty busy. So you need to make sure they're clean, clear, things like 6-foot distances, marked clearly on the floor. That's important. The plexiglass shields, we've all seen them everywhere in stores and cinemas. Putting them in front of the POS, obvious areas, between possible POS areas. Those are a necessity. And removing as many touch points as possible, possibly starting with a greeter at the door. So make sure it's a smiley person and not your sad person. Welcoming your guests as they come in. They're there for the movie experience and want to make sure that it's a fun experience, and they've been looking forward to getting out. So have that big smile waiting. And actually, one of the theater chains counted, I think it was between 174 and 186 possible touch points during the movie going experience. Wow. So trying to eliminate as many of those as possible is great if you can. Credit card only, another important thing is making sure that if you can do credit card only, to do that. If not, have a designated area for cash. Using your apps, the theater's individual apps, and possibly waiving some of those service fees, so people are more encouraged to do that. And then all self-serve areas currently have been powered down or turned off, basically. So those are kind of the big items.
So what's being offered at the concession stand, and how is it being served?
So I think from what I understand, and the feedback is, everybody wants that traditional movie experience. Looking at candy, the theaters that have already opened, some in, for instance, Texas or Oklahoma, their first week's super conservative, and they're sometimes limiting the offers, putting it behind the stand, getting rid of the self-serve areas. The second phase, putting small amounts out, allowing people to take them if they want, but those who aren't comfortable with having somebody touching a bunch of packages, they can have the concessionaire grab it from behind the counter. With popcorn, same thing. Phase one, being pretty conservative, and of course, all your operators are wearing masks and gloves, and they're serving the popcorn by hand in a tub or a bag, often putting a lid on the top or a plastic covering. Phase two, they're noticing that as a couple weeks go by, the customer's not as concerned with covering the popcorn, so they're able to leave that off. But it's really up to the theater and up to the region that they're in. Butter topping, that's an issue in the States. We like our butter topping, and the self-serve areas have been powered down. So those cinemas that happen to have butter toppers for behind the counters are having their operators put the topping on. Some are using squeeze bottles to put the topping on. And so people are giving little cups with lids on it so that the customer can take it into the auditorium and apply it themselves. And then drinks. Phase one, again, filling it or offering bottled options from behind the concession stand, filling it from behind the concession stand in a self-serve area. They've kind of often roped off, put a table in that area, and the customer walks up and either gives them a receipt or gives them the receipt showing that they purchased it, and then having the operator fill the cup for them. Phase two, the customer can fill their own, and then there's a operator standing there ready to wipe down the machine area after every customer. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah. So some theaters are already open. What are you hearing out there?
Well, we're hearing that at the beginning, again, but not sure what the public was going to expect. They made it real simple. $5 tickets in some area, one choice, one size popcorn, one size drink, no refills, $5 for a drink, $5 for a tub of popcorn. And then the second phase, expanding their offerings back to normal. Again, trying to operate the theaters in the way they were intended to be operated and giving our customers that theater experience. So far, the per caps have been decent, which is fantastic. So with each week, there have been noticed increases of anywhere from 13 to 36%, but that's depends on content. So it's been a little bit difficult, and you really have to determine where you are and what content is needed to draw those people in. So that's been important. And the bottom line is getting people back in, having them feel comfortable, have fun while we're doing it, and overwhelm them with promotions instead of just dropping prices.
Okay. So I hear Creators has come up with some COVID-inspired items.
We have. So Creators is 135 years old, and we've been through the Spanish flu, 2 world wars, the Great Depression, 9/11, the coming of the television before that, a few recessions, and now, of course, this pandemic, which has been nothing like we've seen before. During World War II, we actually ended up, we stopped making popcorn machines for a couple of years and aided the war effort, and we were making machine gun parts and radio parts. And then when we came back, when the war was over and we were able to make popcorn machines, again, we returned to that. So today, we're an engineering-based company, and when things get tough, we try to engineer our way out of it. So you can see behind me, we've got a couple of our COVID-inspired items, and that's thanks to many of our theater operators who have said, Shelley, we're having a hard time getting some items in because they were coming from overseas and they're just not available. Well, we have a full shop. Everything's made here in our plant in Wooddale, Illinois. It's all American made, and we're ready to bend sheet metal. We're really good at it. So a couple of the things we've done is on this side of me here, you can see a stand for hand sanitizer. We do not sell the hand sanitizer dispenser and the hand sanitizer with the stands that they go on, and it's a universal stand. Okay. And our drip tray is actually copper. It's an naturally antimicrobial. Right. And then on this side is the Creators Greeter. So here we can have a operator standing behind the screen, and they can tear tickets, or you can use it in other areas where you find fit. And then we're working on a couple of other projects that I can't quite share with you, but stay tuned because we got some exciting things coming out. So give us a call because we're happy to help you out if we can.
Well, thank you very much, Shelley. That's great. Appreciate that. Creators is always innovating in these new times. And once again, that's Shelley Olson, Vice President of Sales and Marketing with Creators & Company and accredited concession supplier with the National Association of Concessionaires. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks again for that video. Another very interesting session here from our partners at both ICTA and the National Association of Concessionaires. Welcome back to some of our panelists that we have here live. This is probably a good opportunity to go ahead and use that questions tab to the side. Let us know what's on your mind. Let us know what you're thinking about. I know that some of our participants have already started answering those questions. I guess to start off the quick discussion to our panelists, any quick sort of reactions from this session, from some of the comments you've seen in the chat, some of the questions, anything you'd like to address off the bat?
I'd like to remind people about cleaning. I didn't mention we've sent out a lot of information on how to get your popcorn machine back up and running after it's been dormant for a while, but there's nothing better than fresh popcorn coming out of a nice, clean machine. Let's make sure that your equipment looks great. Follow the guidelines. We have it on our website, creators.com. It's on our Facebook page, LinkedIn pages. NAConline.org has a ton of information on it, but really making sure that not just the areas around the theater are clean, but that your equipment looks as good as it possibly can.
Oh, is Frank muted?
Oh, I can't hear Frank too well. Frank, you might want to check out your mic in a bit.
How about now?
Perfect. That button
Is
worked.
that better?
Yep. Go ahead.
All right. That was me. So one quick note on UVC. Tom Burt asked a question about UVC, and there are graphs and scales and measurements based on volumes of rooms, volumes and surface area of the room as far as effective applications of UVC, and those are going to have to be taken on a case-by-case basis.
And Alan, on your end, any sort of initial reactions, anything after seeing the videos, all of them together, some of the chats, some of the question boxes?
No, I think, Frank's highlighted this thing with the UVC. One of the challenges, for example, with UVC and air conditioning is the distance that you need to be to the virus you're trying to destroy, and also the length of time. I think it's about 30 seconds exposure. And this is therefore where the challenge is, trying to get that virus to have 30 seconds exposure at that proximity to strong enough UV light to damage it. And that's why there's experimentation around what can be done. But I think it's still to a degree at that sort of phase in terms of some of what can be done. Frank mentioned also the EPA. The EPA, which is, for those who aren't American, is the Environmental Protection Agency. And they, is that right? I think so.
Yep, sure. Let's go with that.
They have they actually have a list of COVID products that are approved for tackling COVID specifically. I suspect that other governments and so on, or governmental bodies, have similar things. So it's worth checking that in terms of what you're using at the cinema as well. There are specific cleaners that you want to make sure are on the list, potentially.
Right.
I see a question here in the questions tab from Robert Greenfield, the Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Bedford Playhouse. He's asking about your experience with foggers. Are there any recommended brands or specific fluid that might work best in a theater setting in your experience?
I've heard of hydrogen peroxide fog and other things, but what you're going to really need to do is contact your seating manufacturer and your finishes. You certainly don't want to aerosolize a cleaning agent or a sanitization agent and have it affect your wall treatments, acoustics, your seats, your screen, any other aspect of your finish. So there are a lot of benign solutions out there that are relatively safe, and then there's but may take longer, and then there's some stuff that's a little bit more harsh, and then some of the chemicals themselves are fully toxic, and need to be fully evacuated from the space prior to access, and some of the foggers that are available actually go through a process, and they'll notify you when the room is complete and it's safe to enter. But they also still recommend that the first access is done with a respirator on, so it's it can be hands off, but it requires trained individuals to do it, and safely, so then the manufacturer can guide you in that step. So
no, it's an interesting sort of situation, right? You don't want to accidentally walk into a situation where you're creating a new problem for yourself while you're trying to solve an original one. A couple of interesting questions also here popping up very recently. One of our colleagues at PBR Cinemas, Abhilash Menon, asks if we can pass concessionaire food through the UVG before providing to guests. Any sort of protocol or indications on that?
I don't have the answer to that as far as the UV the UV lighting and what it does to food. So I think that's something that would have to be confirmed, looked into.
I think that might be an answer in itself. Unless something's confirmed and looked into, I would urge caution in terms of any solutions that might appear improvised or that would have experience like the ones we have here. Great. I think this has been a fantastic session that we've had so far today. One final question that I saw popping up in the final minutes had to do with presentation around concessions. And I know, Shelley, over at Creators, you guys are very careful in making sure products that are not only functional, but can still sort of market the concessions experience. One of the questions we got was around plastic, around the popcorn machine and the sort of optics of that. It might look a bit dirty. I know how easily plastic stains. Any suggestions to make it look good? How can you help the sort of optics of your materials, especially during this crisis?
Definitely don't use any cleaners with alcohol in it. It'll end up clouding the plastic, and the cloth that you use to wipe the plastic is important also, because it can get scratched. And once it's scratched, it's done. So it comes down to the cleaners, and alcohol is not friendly. And unfortunately, a lot of glass cleaners have alcohol in them and it can make it brittle. But there are cleaners out there that are meant for plastic, and that's what you should be using. Because absolutely, once they're scratched and cloudy, you're kind of stuck.
Yeah, it's always a sort of balance, right? You want to make sure it's clean, but you also want to make sure it's presentable.
I did have. Can I add one thing? Sorry, just real quick.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I received on my phone. Golden Link is a distributor out of New York of ours, but they've partnered with Variety on doing masks and other PPE items. But they are custom masks, and they're often a lot of fun. I think if you go to the Golden Link website and naconline.org should have it there. But we were talking about masks earlier, and they've done a great job making them very entertaining.
That's a great thing you bring up, right? I think it's a big question for cinemas right now, gauging audience comfort as they sort of tackle that question, and we'll definitely be tackling that. Frank, I know you wanted to go back to the presentation a bit and share some links at the end. Let me get that queued up for you while we have this here.
There we go. There we go. So these links will be up for a moment, and of course will be posted on the ICTA-web website, and we will be keeping that up along with posting the recording of this session and prior sessions as well. So thank you very much to Box Office, to Creators, and to the National Association of Concessionaires for all your help and participation. And of course, to all the manufacturers who provided all the information for these this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Frank. And a reminder to all our guests, the full video will be available on the ICTA website in the coming days, and full coverage of this session along with the tape recordings of the tutorials are going to be available at boxofficepro.com. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.